So the Ryan Garcia and Conor Benn sit down was explosive. So let's explore this and give some perspective. So we're going to look at 7 ideas. So the first idea was Conor Benn's psychological anchor, the take a knee narrative. Ben returns to it again and again and again. It's the Tank Davis fight reframed as a permanent character flaw. And let's be honest, it's a good angle. And this could do one or two things. It could motivate Garcia to train really hard, or can it force Garcia to make mistakes in the fight? Is this marketing from Conor Benn? Is that the purpose? Or is this a strategy to try and get some psychological edge? Or is it perhaps a combination of both? It's important to remember that in the Tank fight, the question I would ask here, was there not a rehydration in that fight? Was there some context in that fight? Regardless of the context, the narrative bias by Conor is a good angle. And Conor here, he's becoming the bad guy. He's adopting the narrative of the bad guy. And in big fights, in a lot of big fights, there's often a villain. And Conor Benn has decided to be that villain. And that leads to the second talking point, which is Garcia never questions the quit charge directly. So instead of defending the knee, Garcia answers, I guess you can say, with threats. And I guess this is strategic to avoid that discussion. And just to give context, I believe that when he fought Tank, he was hit with, I think it was a straight left to the body. And then the fight was over. It's probably good for Garcia to avoid that discussion, but it can pose a question. Even if we take away the context of if there was a rehydration or if there's some other variables in the fight, is Garcia mentally strong? Because we know that Garcia's short left hook, that's very good. Perhaps that's elite. But is the psychology of Garcia elite? And can Conor get some type of psychological advantage? And if he can get a psychological advantage, will this make a difference in the fight? I think it's important to remember here that Conor went up against Chris Eubank Jr., who's very good with psychology and mind games. And I think those moments against Chris Eubank Jr., those massive build-up moments, that's given Conor Benn experience, and that gives him a significant edge. So the third idea is the weight cut chess move. And Garcia is trying to plant a seed. He's trying to plant a seed. He said words to the effect in an interview that he saw an interview of Conor Benn's coach saying he only has 6 weeks to lose the weight. This prompts the question, will the weight be an issue? Will the weight affect Conor Benn's performance? There's a few things to bear in mind here. Number one, Conor Benn is a dedicated athlete. And number two, considering that Conor Benn is a huge brand, and I would say that they're both the A side, but he's definitely not a B side. Would Conor Benn's team negotiate a compromising position? To me, that's unlikely. And if there was a concession, was the money so good that he would make that concession to compromise his performance? To me, Conor Benn, as a brand, has momentum. He has global reach. And therefore, considering how big Conor Benn is as a machine, it's hard to see that his team would negotiate a weak position. But here's another important point. If Garcia is looking into the weight cut, is he underestimating the challenge? And is that perspective going to affect his preparation? Because if he doesn't prepare for the challenge of Conor Benn, then he increases the chances of Conor Benn being successful. And I think that's a really important point. Does Garcia believe that Conor Benn will be compromised, and will that affect his preparation? That's an important point. And then the fourth idea is that, again, the dismissal of Garcia, the minimization. I think he stated words to the effect that you're going to get hit and then I'm just going to finish you off. And it's important to acknowledge here that Conor Benn, he's an emotional person. You could say an emotional boxer in the sense that he brings this big intensity, but he's also a disciplined fighter. For example, in the rematch with Chris Eubank Jr., there were minimal mistakes. So relying on Conor Benn to make a mistake in itself is a mistake. You have to force the mistakes. And I think that there's some there's been a lot of minimization from Garcia. And whether he believes that minimization is really important, because if that affects his preparation, if that affects his sparring, if that affects the way he approaches the fight, again, he's giving Conor Benn a greater chance. And I think it's important that people understand that. I understand that there's this narrative that Conor Benn hasn't proven himself to be world class, but Conor Benn is dedicated. Conor Benn has a good team. Conor Benn has a good trainer, and he's courageous. And therefore, you need to take that opposition very seriously. And then the fifth idea is that Benn's opposing thesis that one shot ends it all. I think he states something to the fact that the brain can only take so much, one shot and you're out. Now again, Conor Benn should not be relying on a knockout, because Conor Benn punches hard, but we haven't ascertained if Conor Benn is a power puncher. He's a hard puncher, but is he a power puncher? And also, considering if you look at Ryan Garcia's loss to Gervonta Davis, it was a body shot. So to me, one of the areas to focus on would be the body. So the body attack would be very interesting in this fight. But perhaps Conor Benn is being Machiavellian. Perhaps there's a deflection here. Perhaps he's talking about scoring the knockouts, going to the head, because in reality, when the fight transpires, he's going to be going to the body. And boxers often do this. There's a whole thing of when a boxer says he's going to go for a knockout, that means he's going to box. Or if a boxer says he's going to box, it means he's going to go for a knockout. It's creating that unpredictability, and it's what I call being Machiavellian. David Hay used to adopt that strategy. And then moving into idea 6, we have the resume war. And both men are engaging in minimization. They bury each other's best win. And this is this, do they really feel that way? Or is this part of the marketing? Or is it a combination of both? Now, Ben dismisses Barrios. He says he's coming off 3-4 draws. That's his greatest win. And Garcia, like at the same hand, dismisses the Eubank Jr. His narrative bias from Eubank Jr. is that a 36-year-old with no reflexes anymore. Now, when we look at the Chris Eubank Jr. fight, there, of course, is the context of the rehydration. And I think it's very difficult to look over that. But Chris Eubank Jr. did bring experience. He brought passion, he brought commitment, and he brought a significant challenge. And I think that regardless of the context, Conor Benn did make amendments in that fight. And in the rematch, he showed that he'd matured and that his boxing IQ had improved. And it's important to realize that both things can be true at once. You know, the opposition can be compromised, but you could still improve as a boxer. And again, there's this reoccurring narrative that the minimization from Garcia can be dangerous if it affects your preparation. Of course, you can use minimization to try and undermine your opponent, but it's not only what Garcia thinks, what does his team think? Because if he's underestimating him, and if his team are underestimating him, this could be dangerous, because I believe that Conor Benn is a very prepared athlete. He's a very confident athlete. He has a good team. He has a good trainer. And I believe that Conor Benn will bring the best version of himself come fight night. And then the 7th idea is the motivation asymmetry. And Conor Benn, he frames it as destiny. He states that this is fulfilling my legacy. 10 years of hard work. And he states that this is nothing like the Eubank fight. Of course, the Eubank fight, there was a history. For those that don't know, the fathers of Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn, they fought each other before in what in Britain was a great fight. They had 2 fights. So there was this massive history. The fathers were, British boxing legends. So that fight has a history that this fight could never have. However, even though the fight has a different context, there's still a lot on the line. And I think it's important because there's a lot on the line. There's a lot of motivation. There's the competition. But at the same time, there's not that personal issue. And Conor Benn and Garcia have had fights where it's become personal. So, of course, Conor Benn had the personal conflict with Chris Eubank Jr. because they had that family history. And then from Garcia's perspective, he had a personal affair when he fought Devin Haney, who of course is a great fighter. So this fight isn't personal. So of course they're marketing, there's a lot of minimization, there's a lot of threats, but it's not personal. But clearly, even though it's not personal, Conor Benn is desperately trying to get under Garcia's skin with the quit narrative, and he's playing the villain, and he's doing that very successfully. And Ryan Garcia, he's simply minimizing Conor Benn's achievements, and he's cool, he's calm and collective. And part of me wonders, is he too calm and is he too collective? Because like I said, I believe that Conor Benn is going to bring the best version of himself come fight night. Think of this. Ultimately, this fight may be decided by who controls the narrative inside the ring. Garcia believes Benn's emotion will create openings, while Benn believes pressure and power will break Garcia. But both risk oversimplifying the other. The weight cut, the resume debate, and mind games, they all matter, yet preparation matters more. Benn must stay disciplined. Garcia must force mistakes. And neither can afford to underestimate the challenge standing directly in front of them. So that's the end of the video. Now I'm trying to build a digital boxing community, and that means I'm interested in your thoughts, I'm interested in your perspectives, and I'm interested in your observations. Now if you want to support the channel, press like, hype, and subscribe. And if you want to watch more content like this, then simply click here or click here. As always, thanks for your time. It is much appreciated.